Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting a new edition of our TV show, European Reality. Today in a new format, in English, and I have here with me one of the most powerful, I'm daring to say, one of the most involved and passionate voice of the civil society in Brussels, Mr. Peter Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt, thank you for joining our TV show and thank you for all of your work which you are doing it in the workers' interest, in protecting the environment, in protecting the farmers. You are president of the NAT section in European Economic and Social Committee. I'm daring to ask you, how do you see the future of the climate agenda in the new mandate of the Commission?
If you ask me this, then I tell you I want to see it on a priority. Whether it comes to a priority is highly dependent on the political pressure which we put to the Commission. So the so-called mission letters which were sent from von der Leyen, from the President of the Commission, to the incoming new college, to the incoming commissioners, are looking quite, let me say, more promising than we expected during the European elections. So means she's tasking the different commissioners in order to implement different aspects, and one is the sustainability aspect into their work for the next 5 years.
But if we are discussing about the structure of the Commission, I'm not seeing social dialogue there. I'm not seeing workers' rights very prominent. And if we are taking into account all the work which has been done by the previous Commission, how do you see the future of the workers' right in a context in which we are not quite sure? It's a more or less gray situation when we're discussing about workers' rights in the context of the new Commission, which is discussing, by the way, a lot about competitiveness, about competitivity, about reducing the cohesion fund, and of course improving the competitivity aspect of the EU.
I mean, this is disappointing, to be crystal clear. So because we saw that this, especially on the climate policies, one of the reasons why farmers went to the street, or we have reluctancy also within some trade unions, not all, some trade unions, in order to move for more climate action rather than less, has to do that we do not take the people with us in the climate policy. Means we say buy electric cars, but we don't give them enough money to buy them. So that's why this is disappointing. But since I'm a trade unionist my whole life, so I'm already 45 years a member in my union, I know that we have to rely on our own power. So means even if the Commission is not putting the social dialogue, the social aspects into the forefront of their policy making, we have to do it anyway. So there's a quite clear principle for us as trade unionists: never give up. So means we have to put it at the table in a combination, social policies, in the combination with green, or even in that case, climate policies.
But since you mentioned social policy, do you think that there is a future of the climate agenda without tackling the poverty in the EU? Because I'm seeing that in some member states, the situation is quite difficult when we are discussing about poverty, Romania being one of them.
And I think we have to distinguish. The one is that we talk about poverty, and the other thing is that we talk about people being employed and having decent jobs. So I would like to distinguish here. And the answer is, on both aspects, there is no proper implemented climate policy without respecting and considering the situation of people having less income or being in poverty. So what this means concretely. So for the people being in the jobs, we have a big risk. And here, just look at Valencia in these days. So there's no, for me, no debate to contest that we must have more climate action, because the people are losing their livelihoods, they're losing their jobs because the infrastructure is gone. And in this case, it doesn't matter whether they're poor or having jobs. But even people have jobs, they have still a bit of money in order to survive. And this week I had a presentation on how climate change is injustice, brings injustice into the system. So, and it is clear, this is from the FAO, from the UN World Nutrition Organization, is the poorer the people are, the more affected they are with the climate change. So, if we think about that, it must be clear for us that we, workers, deprived people being in more vulnerable situation, that we need more climate action, not less, because we are more affected.
What about justice? Because we need climate action. If we are looking at what the Commission has delivered so far, Just Transition Platform, it's able, this instrument, to tackle all those challenges which we are facing at the grassroots level.
No, it's not. Of course it's not. But this has to do with a kind of an addiction which we have in Europe. So the addiction is the belief, I could also say a faith, no? So the belief into the free market. So they think if we just frame it, the market will deliver. And that's an absolutely wrong assumption. So the market won't deliver anything if we do not regulate the market in a frame. And all this action must be financed in the end of the day. And we can't put the burden on the individuals or on the farmers, workers in the agri-food sector or in the automotive sector or wherever. So what we have to do is to understand that we must have a collective approach, a joint approach. And that means clearly we have to take the money where it is from. Some people say, Peter, that's too easy. Is to tax the rich?
Of course. But since you have mentioned money, because it's a fundamental aspect of our discussion, how do you see the future of the common agriculture policy? Because at least in Romania, the common agriculture policy is spending money or is delivering money to the biggest farmers. And this is creating a lot of poverty in the rural areas, in the rural communities, which don't have enough opportunities in order to develop. Do you think that we need a reform of the common agriculture policy in the future?
Yes.
How do you see this reform?
Allow me to bring a bigger picture into this. So the point is here, coming from the past, looking into the history, the common agriculture policy had his place. No? Because once it was launched more than 60 years ago, after the impression of the Second World War, so people thought we have to establish something that people would never go into hunger or a starving situation. So that's why the design of the common agriculture policy at that time was to bring food security into Europe, that people will always have food. But this has changed, no? Because we are able to produce so much food that we export. The last figures are 69 billion euros net export only from the agricultural products outside of Europe. So it means we are able to produce for Europe enough food. That's why we are, as ESC, saying that we have to bring, and that's my full conviction, the sustainability aspect into the food production. So it means it's no longer the question how many we produce, rather what we produce and how we produce it. Means we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we have to produce more healthy diets. So these are aspects which has to be discussed within the common agriculture policy. So why we have in Romania, in Germany as well, so the most of the money is going into the big farms. This has to do with the so-called hectare-based payment. So that means you bring a lot of ground, hectares, then you get more money. And we have to phase out of this approach. The ESC made an opinion where we have already the position to phase out. And now that's the development. So we have now already kind of greening elements in the common agriculture policy which are necessary. Perhaps we have to do more. But now we come to a point where, and that's my prediction, the common agriculture policy will come anyway to a breaking point. This has to do with the enlargement process. So if we onboard Ukraine, Serbia, whatever country wants to join the union, then we have the geopolitical aspect, but we have other aspects. The one is we get more than 50% of arable land in comparison to that what we have right now into the EU. And the question to the policymaker is simply how they want to manage a system which is based on hectares. Only Ukraine, when you ask the Ukrainian system what they consider as a small farm, I don't know whether they have a clue what they're talking about. They say 0 to 1,000 hectares. A small farm. The average farm in Europe is 70.4 hectares.
Yes.
Now, so if we onboard them with the current system will immediately collapse because we do not get more money into the system. Let me go on a step further. People do not reflect it, but perhaps it's of interest of the auditorium. The future of our production is circular economy. And if we think circular economy together with an aspect which will be necessary, means we're going to phase out of fossil fuels. It's decided last year in Dubai at the climate conference. That means we need substitution for plastic packaging, for everything what is made out of fossil fuels.
True.
The answer is bioeconomy, nature-based solution, you may say, in order to produce these products, to package food, for instance. We need substitution material. For this, we need land. So if we want to make sure that people do not starve in the future with the growing population, means we use that what we have for food production, but we need more and more land to produce energy and more land to produce substitution materials, nature-based solutions only for the food sector. Don't talk about other sectors. So where do we get this from? And it's not only the enlargement process a question of geopolitical aspects. It's also a question of a strategic European autonomy, not being dependent on Russian gas, not being dependent on American. We do not know what's going to happen in this country now. But I don't want to be dependent on that. We need a European understanding and a European holistic approach how we're going to produce this. And I can imagine that you will immediately come then to the point, what does it mean for European workers in the end of the day?
This was my next question.
Yeah, but that's exactly the point. So if we think that through the supply chains, not only in food, in the agri supply chain, that will create jobs. That will definitely create jobs and more on the local basis rather than we had it now in a way to delocalize, the production in a way.
But if you are analyzing what was happened with Trump campaign and with the election in US and the structure of the Trump campaign, meaning US wants to give up now, or he promised that we will give up to the Paris Agreement. And if you are analyzing this in a context in which Russia has the same, more or less, approach, do you think that the European society is capable of understanding those challenges and keep on track the climate agenda?
I mean, ask the people living in Valencia.
True.
So ask people in Germany 2 years ago in Ahrtal. Ask the people in Romania, in Bulgaria, in Poland, what happened with the floods or the droughts in that areas. So we have to ask these people whether they are capable to understand that this is something which is coming more and more, and we produced and invite the people to show this video which we produced with the colleagues being affected in this way. There is no other choice. I said this in the morning in another context on this bio-based materials, because they asked me, Mr. Schmidt, entrepreneurs, employers, shall we go this way? And I said, you don't have any other choice to do it.
You will go at some point.
So you have to do it because we need these materials. We need this transition period now, and as quick as possible. Because even if America is not doing it, China is not doing it, which is wrong, by the way. China is much quicker on this in the renewable energies and in this bioeconomy as we think. No?
It's a market-driven policy. It's not necessary.
No, it's not. But they do it because they want to get into these different markets in the world. So, and they support their industry. We don't do that because of this faith, what I said, on the market belief. So we should do that. Europe should support European industry much more, rather saying, "Oh, okay, the market will solve it." This won't happen.
True. But tell me, how do you see the role or the agenda of the trade union in this context?
To push for more climate change, more climate action.
But do you see an involvement at the company level? Meaning, what I'm trying to ask you more specifically, how do you see the instrument of collective bargaining in this framework? Because the trade unions are negotiating collective contracts, more or less. How do you see their involvement at the company level?
I was 27 years a negotiator on the ground. I negotiated collective agreements, a quarter of a century. So it was my job to do it. And I get this question very often that people say, Peter, collective agreements, collective bargaining, is this a way how we can and should use for that? And my answer is clear, yes. Why? Because going to the food sector, also it's just that's what I'm coming from. The future, for a competitive product in the food sector, will be something where the consumer will see immediately at the label how this product is produced. If the companies do not make the transition for a climate neutral production on food, we have already examples. Go to Denmark, into a canteen. They have barcodes where the people in the canteen are scanning, and then I get the footprint, the CO2 footprint. So, and what is the future consumer will do? Perhaps not that quick, but in the next 5 years or next 10 years, they will buy only these products, will have the lowest CO2 footprint and the highest social standards, ethical standards. So if the companies are not doing that voluntarily, we as trade unions know that we have to force them. And how do we do that? We do it through collective agreements. And it's not only about money. No. It's about other standards within the collective agreements which we can set. That means education for colleagues in greening the processes, just the production processes and all the stuff like that. We should use and to modernize also our collective agreement system in thinking. No, it's not in doing. In doing, there's nothing to be changed, but in order to add qualitative elements for the collective agreements.
Do you think that you raised two important points, but do you think that the trade union movement in the EU is perceiving, especially in the east part of Europe, is perceiving the importance of their role for the future of the well-being of the citizens of the EU? From the context of what you have already mentioned.
I'm not in the position to judge. You know, that's not my way, because as a negotiator, I know how difficult it is to come to agreements anyway.
We are working also with those unions at the EU level.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I want to say, clarify. And of course, I would like to see that the labor movement in Europe, independently whether we talk about east or west or north or so, should do anyway more in this. But the labor movement is quite old. No? So we have 150, more than my union is the oldest union in Germany. So founded in 1865. And we had to change quite often our way of working and our focuses. No? So it's not that we always and still are focused on money.
Wages, yes. So.
Last week, my union made an announcement together with the employers, exactly on the point what is to be done for climate action. So it means that the trade unions are coming more and more to the understanding that the climate change is a risk for jobs, is a risk for well-being. So if they want to deserve, or if they want to serve something for the members, they have to do it. The members will ask for that. So that means there will be a simply pressure coming from the ground. And this is what I experienced. The people are sometimes quite more developed or advanced as we as functionaries think, because they know what is happening, because they have kids.
If you are looking at the Romanian workers, he or she also have kids. But the problem is, sorry to say it, Peter, the problem is poverty. If you don't have enough means, enough financial resources to cover your basic needs, well, it's difficult to think of how to be friendly with the environment. So I think that the issue of poverty, as we have mentioned earlier, is critical for the success the success of the climate agenda. But what I wanted to ask you, it's in some sectors in Romania, I have heard often that the comfort of some, especially the West, is based on the poverty of others. This is very often used in different propaganda materials. Do you think, my question to you is the next one, do you think that there is enough unity in the trade union movement in order to tackle those propaganda messages which are fake in the end? How do you see this from the perspective of the trade unions at the EU level?
I mean, it's an old game, no? So the Romans did it already, split, and then you have the power. So that's why we should not go into the trap. And the trade unions, they have shown over the last century that they are able to manage it. I know that what I'm talking about, because I was in charge of international affairs. And of course, it's always the game saying, okay, if you are able to give us something from the employer's perspective, then we're gonna safeguard your jobs. So, and that goes on the expense of others. And then the game started, not to race the race to the bottom in a way. And the only way to counter this there are two things. The one is to work hardly on an understanding of solidarity. We are only able to manage it if we have an understanding to counter this with joint action. Means if is happening something in Romania with this threat, we must activate colleagues in Sweden, in Germany, in France, in order to support them. I know that it's working, and my job before I did that quite successfully. So, but it's a hard work to give this. The second point is we have an educational duty. We must bring the distribution issue into the debate on a daily basis.
What do you mean by distribution?
So we have an unfair distribution. So if we have a look into the situation of wealth and poverty. Also this week in Germany, for instance, that we have an own foundation. It's Hans Böckler Foundation. Came out with a report. And the report says clearly the gap between rich and poor is increasing. So, what does that mean for us? We have to take it and say there's a policy demand, and we have to be more vocal and, let me say it in this wording, more aggressive in our demand in the collective agreements, because the distribution is the first distribution part is the direct negotiations between the trade unions and the employers. And if we are strong enough, then we reduce poverty. But we have to explain this to the people that the increase of the wages has not at all an impact on that what is happening at the shop floor in a factory. So, means concretely, if we have a situation as we have it. Sorry if I mentioned the German situation more because I have the figures most in mind, but we also have it mirrored in Europe. If round about 2%, 3% of the population has 2/3 in Germany of the wealth, of the money in cash, and 50% have nothing on their account, then it's clear that we have here an imbalance which has to be tackled. And I said before already, so that means we must be bold enough also saying, the one is our negotiation process, what we have directly, but also the demand is that we have to tax the rich, because we need this money, not only for reducing poverty, for the transition.
True.
Otherwise, we won't manage it. And how do we want to explain that to our children once, or to the grandchildren? If they're going to come to us and say, hi, Dad or Grandpa, tell us, how was it when we had pension systems, we had care systems, everything was well managed, you had green fields, we had a super climate. So how was this at that time? Did you tell them, it was for us?
Good, but
it's not for you. It was just for us.
Yeah, but since you mentioned inequality, let's take a concrete example, social conditionalities and the common agricultural policy, because we had a debate in Romania about the implementation of this instrument in the national legislation framework. Do you think that it is enough? We have enough instruments in order to tackle inequalities, not necessarily in the agri-food system, but also in all the sectors, because we are quite dependent. If I'm looking at the Romanian industry, we are quite dependent of the German ones. And the German one is right now, it's not doing very well, the automotive and things like that. So we are also worried. So we are together in this situation. Do you think that we do have enough instruments as social conditionalities, but it's clearly an instrument specific to the agri-food sector? Or we need to build instruments in this regard in the future, we as a trade unionist?
No, we don't, because otherwise we would not be in this mess.
True.
If we would have it, then we would not be in this. But as I said already, so the faith in the free market is going hand in hand with the demand of reducing bureaucratic burden, reducing regulation. So, and it's not that they talk only about that the employers, the farmers, do not have to fill too many forms. No, they say we have to get rid of a couple of regulations which binds us in a way to be social. So I'm following policies now for 40, 45 years. And at that time, they launched in Europe and globally the neoliberal process. And this neoliberal process has led to the situation in which we are. I tell you, when I was a boy, my mom gave me the recipe from the doctor, the receipt, and said, go to the pharmacy and take all the medicaments which we need. So I was barefoot running in the 60s to the next pharmacy. I got it. We did not have to pay anything on that. We had it free. So ask the people now. So you went to the doctor, and then you just knocked, and then you said, sit down. Then after an hour, half an hour, you had a date with the doctor. So good luck today. So means they reduced services for citizens, protection for citizens. So that's why the people are getting more and more into the poverty, because they are not able to afford even, medicaments or all this stuff like that. So, in Germany, they did not invest because they said we can't do it because we made a limit of investments. So how stupid is this in order to have a look into the future, not investing? When I was young, I bought an apartment. I was lucky to do it without any money. But now I'm free of that. I don't have it any longer. So because I invested into the future, in my own future. So that's the point. If we would take 40% of the richest Europeans, couple of more than 300 families in Europe, just taking 40% of their wealth, they would have still 60%. Huh?
True.
None of the member states, of the European member states, would have any debts. So, and then we talk about distribution. It's that simple. I know that people say, that's too easy, Mr. Schmidt. Peter, that's too easy. But it's easy to take the money from the poor? That's easy. Just a decision, take the money from the poor. So it means for us trade unionists, it is extremely important that we understand that the distribution system is key for the transition. And that's why collective agreements are important. We must keep the business sector accountable for the transition, not to escape. Saying, okay, now Russia is not doing it, America is getting out of the Paris Agreement on 1.5 degree.
We are seeing this movie right now. We are seeing more or less this movie right now.
So it doesn't give the Europeans the excuse not to push for more. I go to the climate conference next week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the European politicians and together with other actors at Baku to tell them don't give up pushing for more climate action rather than what we have. So we called last year for a loss and damage fund for the Global South. This year, and we will prepare that in our section, you will get it. So we will launch now the process in asking for a loss and damage fund for Europe. Yeah, because we need it.
True.
So what do the people do in Valencia? So they get now a bit, they open now a bit couple of funds and say, okay, maximum 42,000 euros you get as a compensation, and that's it. Good luck as a farmer. Your tractor is gone in the floods, so you good luck. You get a couple of tires for a tractor with 42,000 euros. Does it mean for a society, if we have the climate change in terms of financing? This is what we see now almost on a daily basis, unfortunately.
If you are looking at the Draghi report, how do you see the impact of the report in the context in which you have described earlier? Because if you are looking at the Draghi right now, the Draghi report is based mostly on competitiveness. Do you think that the EU institution will follow that report? Because it seems like.
The Draghi report goes a bit further. He's not just talking about a competition in an old sense, let me say.
No.
He's talking about circular economy. No, he's talking about greening the industry. So this is what makes Europe competitive in the future. So if we read it in a way as we want to read it, and that will be the problem, that every lobby group wants to find their, they're going to start already cherry picking. So to see, that's about competition. Yes, it's about competition. Yes, happy have a competitive economy in Europe, but a competitive which is based on fairness, a competitiveness which is based on not race to the bottom, and which is based on within the planetary boundaries. Then I'm fine with this. But this is what Draghi is saying. It's not just saying, just increase the competition in order to make the race to the bottom, which we had.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future of the EU agenda, of the trade unions agenda, in the future. Mr. Schmidt, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for your work. Thank you for defending the workers' interest. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us. See you next time at another TV show, European Reality.